This is an advanced tutorial for setting up JAMULUS to jam online with your friends. One of the first things we're going to do is bring up two instances. I have this is one of the secret weapons here is Voicemeeter Mixer. I've got three inputs. I'm using one for the microphone and also another one to hook like a guitar. The output from your guitar amp into here or some other instrument. And I also am using software synthesizers in this virtual input channel. And I'm doing that through a VST host called CARLA and Minihost Modular. This one. And I'll go over these setups a little bit more, but I want to give you an overview first. And there'll be some links in the show notes for more information on how to get this set up. It's really not that complicated, it's just a learning curve. So the first thing I found very useful is if you're going to be singing or talking or just in general, you want to be able to hear your voice in sync. And with the delay that you get online, you can't really do that very well. But hearing yourself first in your own local area, just from your voice going right from your mouth into your ears and bone conduction and room echo and bouncing off the walls. But if you don't want to do that, you can get two instances and then turn the mic off. So as you see, I have mic, so everything turned off except for the synthesizer right there. And this is a microphone, and you can hear the delay there, and so that can really throw you off. So I'm still getting the mic in right here, which you see the VU meters on this JAMULUS, which is the microphone. So it's getting in there and everybody else is hearing me, but I'm not hearing my own signal. I found that very useful. Now I can still sing in sync with everybody else because that's how JAMULUS works. Everything gets timed from the server and gets sent back out to everybody, so that if you listen to your own signal only from the server, then you can play in sync a lot better than if you just listen to your own signal locally, which is almost immediate, which there is no delay. But you can get used to playing with delay. It's not that difficult. It just takes a little bit of practice. So here we have some of the settings we're trying to get here. Let's see if I can find it. Here we go. So I've got about 50 milliseconds delay, and I'm just using the server that's on this machine right here, this computer. You can get used to even more than this, but for every few milliseconds, that's just extra miles out that you can play in sync with somebody if you get used to playing your own instrument, which means you have to hit the tone a little bit sooner than normal to be able to hear it. But after you get used to this, it just becomes automatic. You don't even really notice it. And you can get pretty close to up to 80 to 100 milliseconds, just depending on how fast the song is. It's not too bad. So what I'd like to do is also show you some of the other stuff here. This Voicemeeter Mixer is fairly easy to set up. So I'm using the USB microphone selected there as input 1, input 2. I've got a Behringer USB. It's also a USB sound card. So I have two USB sound cards, and I'm using the laptop's own sound card as the hardware output, and that's what's going into the input of JAMULUS. So this mixer is mixing all the audio and sending it into this connection bay here. And from this connection bay, I'm able to take JAMULUS, both instances, one just for the microphone here, which is coming out of this 3 and 4. And then on Voicemeeter, this is when it's in composite mode in this B channel here, which is the virtual ASIO channel. That's 3 and 4, this is 5 and 6, and this is 7 and 8. I'm also using another piece of software from VB Audio called the ASIO-BRIDGE, and this allows me to use desktop audio and send it to JAMULUS, but I don't hear it again until I receive back from the server that signal. So here's JAMULUS right here and here. I don't need the microphone output, but here's the first instance where I want to hear my own signal from the keys. And from there, I also have this ASIO-BRIDGE going to the input of JAMULUS. So if I play an audio file, which I have set up here, we'll hit that, and I should be able to hear it as it comes back from JAMULUS. So if you had something queued up and you all wanted to listen to it, try to jam with it, or just review something on it, then as for practice or rehearsal, that comes in very useful. But if you wanted to play with something, say you had an original loop and you just wanted to kick this on, you would be in sync with it if you did it this way. Because if you played it on your computer first, you would hear it 50 milliseconds before everybody else, and everything would be out of sync. So using this ASIO-BRIDGE, and you use the default device is the counter of this. This hooks up to virtual audio cables called hi-fi cables right there. So I have this as my default. So every bit of sound on my laptop, desktop, whether it's from an audio file or from a browser, will go into here and then into this connection bay right there, and then out to JAMULUS, not anywhere else. Then from the output of JAMULUS to my sound card. So it goes to this server and then back to this instance of JAMULUS as it's returned from the server. So that's how it works. JAMULUS is a server instituted setup. So you hook up to a server, you try to find one that's close to you in the server list, or set up your own server, which I've done. My server is on the same machine here again. So it goes to the server and bounces back, and that's why you have that little bit of delay. I also have in here Bitwig, so it's ready to go. It's ready to record the session, and I'm hooking up the microphone, synthesizers, and if I wanted to hook that other one, I would just send some wires over to the input of it. So all that's hooked up, so I can record and then play it back, and then you and everybody else can listen to it if you draw wires from its output back to the input of JAMULUS like that. So this is the Jack audio for Windows called Jackrouter, and there's some tutorials about this that have already been done. You can look at those first. This is not a tutorial for Jackrouter. This is just trying to get JAMULUS set up for really cool operation as far as bringing everything to bear that you have as far as equipment, software, synthesizers. And with this Minihost Modular VST Host, we're using, as its ASIO driver, Jackrouter. And the same thing for this ASIO-BRIDGE, using Jackrouter. So both Minihost VST hosts, and you've got a bunch of plugins. And right now I'm using the drums, and in 3 instances of Zen Add Sub FX. That's this sound here. And those little pops are because my video and the CPU are just maxing out, and so you're going to get some audio buffer issues. But that's not coming from the original audio at all. So we have that. You've got the idea for the microphone so you don't delay. And this won't put an extra burden. I think JAMULUS may come with a maximum of 7 by default, but you can change that up to 12, or it might be up to 20 now. So you can change that in the server INI file, or there's a server command so that you can allow up to 12. And I'll try to find that command and put it in the show notes. And here's the Jackrouter through port audio. There'll be some links in the show notes. And that's the basic setup. Make sure you have mix down, so that one thing about this setup is you don't want the output going back to the input of JAMULUS, so that's why we're using 3 and 4 here. And if you'll look, let's see if it'll come back. See, right here, it's not the first 2 columns, it's the 3 and 4 columns. The first 2 columns is what sends it to JAMULUS through this virtual audio output called the B channel right here. That's why this B is selected. But the output of JAMULUS, and so that you can hear it on your sound card or headphones, comes in channels 3 and 4. So we have that. We have this. We'll go over the settings a little bit more. Let's check that out again. So take a closer look at it. You have 3 settings. I use the stereo and high because I'm using a synthesizer and a MIDI keyboard. This jitter buffer, I don't like to put it on auto. I like to figure out. So what you do is hold down a chord and then see how low you can take this before you start getting back a lot of pops and clicks. So take that up 1 or 2 notches. And locally, this is not too much delay here. I'm using the setup at 256. Your system may get faster if you can do the 128 as far as the buffers. But on Voicemeeter and Jackrouter, I've got 256 here. And this is the main screen. Just left click in that little window there, and this will bring this up. This comes default like this. You'll have to change the buffers from 512 to 256, and Jamulus runs at 48K, so you're going to need to set everything on your system to 48K too, so that everything matches up, and you don't have to use any CPU for resampling. So I think that's about it as far as the basics of this. All these softwares will be listed that you can download and try out. And I'm using QSynth here. The QSynth also is in the Jackrouter. It has an ASIO driver with it, but you have to add that yourself, and there's a video about that, how to get ASIO support for QSynth or Fluid Synth. And the drums, this is just the free demo that comes with Addictive Drums if you set up an account. That's what it sounds like. And again, all those pops are the CPU being challenged. They're not there if I don't run this video recording software. So that's that. I think that's just about the main idea here. This is default. You just click on this ASIO device, select Jackrouter. Then in Jackrouter you run the wires. Got midi-ox here so that my keyboard takes it from the MIDI keyboard to, that's right, let's go to that here. This loop MIDI is very nice to have. So I'm sending everything through to receive. All the synthesizers are listening on loop MIDI port 1. This is a virtual MIDI port. So and then midi-ox is taking my keyboard and hooking everything from the keyboard to that virtual MIDI loop cable. And that works pretty good for me. And one nice thing about that is you get a bunch of information there so you can check your instruments, your MIDI instruments, the MIDI software. And I think that's just about it. That's what it looks like when you open up Jackrouter. Let me take a look at this is the main ingredient here as far as setting this up. And I'll have this string. Once you set up Jackrouter, you need to tell it which ASIO device to use. And because Voicemeeter has its own ASIO driver, that's what I'm using. That's why in composite mode you have this system here and this system here is from Voicemeeter and to Voicemeeter input. And then on Voicemeeter, that's what goes to the sound card, which is my Realtek. Now it also has a second channel too. So if you had some other speakers or headphones, if you had a specific sound card you just use for headphones, you could also add that, which sometimes is kind of nice. And let me double check. I think that's just about it for getting set up on Jamulus. The server is pretty straightforward. You just click on the server and it will automatically hook to the machine that the server is on. If you add it to the list, then people can click on your server then and give it a shot. But you can join other servers and it usually shows a list of who's on there. So if we went to connect here, you can see the different ones. That's the main one in Germany right there. We have one in the United States here that's only 60 milliseconds, 68 milliseconds. Now, I've used that before, and again, once you get used to the delay, you can kind of pretty well play together, pretty easy. And once it gets up to this level, though, it's a little bit too much. Once it goes over 100 milliseconds, you're going to run into trouble. So you try to get your local delay down as low as you can, and that gives you more mileage so you can reach out farther to other people. You try to find a server in between you all that's equidistant so that everybody can get a fairly similar delay. That makes things a little bit easier. So I'm going to hook this up to locally right there, and we'll reconnect. And there we have it. So then once you do that, once you change JAMULUS, you got to come back and hook everything back up. So we're coming from the synth, and from the ASIO-BRIDGE, just like that. Just left click, hold, and draw the wires to the inputs, and it automatically connects. And let's see if we got some action here. Still have microphone LED, testing 1, 2, so everything's back again. And that's working too. Okay, I think we covered most of everything here. But this setup really helps if you have both microphone and voice and your instruments, and if you wanted to play an audio file or you had something stored up. You could even use like MIXXX here. MIXXX does a really good job. So you could load up something in here and play that to everybody with the same setup. You want to use this, so we'll show you how to set this up. We have ASIO. You want to select Jackrouter, hit apply, and then OK. And once that loads up, you should see it pop up in Jackrouter here, which is right here. So if we wanted to send it, we're going to send it to the input of JAMULUS. Always go to the input of JAMULUS first because you want to be in sync. You'll hear it at the same time everybody else hears it. That's what the JAMULUS server does. And then in MIXXX, if you wanted to load something up, go to the desktop and try to find that audio file there. Here's a good one right there. And once it loads up, you can hit play. MIXXX lets you slow it down. It has a bass, mids. Anyway, you can do even some DJ work there if you wanted to over JAMULUS. And I think, finally, I think that's about it. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of explorations you can do in here. You have up to 4 ASIO inputs on Voicemeeter. So I've got Jackrouter. I've got, and you can have up to 3 more. Yeah, this is Jackrouter. So I only have Jackrouter on the input that's using Voicemeeter as its ASIO driver. Then I put everything else into Jackrouter, and that seems to be work pretty good. And this is Minihost, and this connection bay here is also 64-bit, and it comes with its own plugins too. So if you wanted to, you could do all sorts of things here. You could add some. It has VSTIs and VST plugins and effects. So all sorts of abilities. Let me bring that one up and I'll show you what that does. And there's a synthesizer. And here's TAL right there. Now that has a MIDI input, so you could also should be able to and this might sound kind of weird. Input a JAMULUS so we can listen to it. So that was what that sounds like. And that's an on-off button. So a lot of fun. And you have VSTi instruments and all sorts of effects that once you configure CARLA, tell it where to go for those VST plugins, which mine is right there. It'll scan for all of them. In the engine mode, I have Jack and multiple clients. And then you hit Add Plugin and hit Refresh button, and it'll load all your VST plugins and list them for you here. This is also a tutorial. This tutorial goes into more information when you use a previous video that's been made about Jackrouter. All right. So get some Voicemeeter going. Hook up your guitar, microphone, and use Jackrouter. And get JAMULUS hooked up to Jackrouter. Use the composite mode here for Voicemeeter right there. And when you do, again, one input will be 3 and 4, 2 is 5 and 6, and virtual is 7 and 8. And that's where this audio will come out. You don't want to use 1 and 2 because that combines them all. And you won't hear anything since these sliders on Voicemeeter are all the way down. We don't need them. Since in composite mode it comes out full blast. Now to hear it on your speakers, of course, you're going to need both A and B selected here. You'll need mix down so that you can hear 3 and 4 channels will go to your speakers, which again is the output from JAMULUS so that it doesn't go back into the input. Everything that comes in on 1 and 2 is going to go right back out through this B mixture here, this channel B right there. And you don't want the output of JAMULUS going back to the input, so you've got to keep those two separate. And I think that's just about it. So this is not for beginners, of course, but it doesn't hurt to get the software started and get the learning curve going. And there's some other videos that will help out if you think this might be something you're interested in. It has worked really well on JAMULUS so that you can really combine a lot of stuff. Makes it a lot of fun to jam with other people. So thank you for watching.